In today's show, it's a bit of a cowboy episode today. We discuss things like evolution, US GDP, Russia v Ukraine reporting, amongst other things.
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasula, and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello, my friend, once again. I hope you're keeping safe and well. He's gone.
Hello?
He's not even answering me.
Sorry, you broke up completely. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't even guess what you were saying.
I asked whether you're keeping safe and well.
Well, you know the usual story. You know, it's the usual. It's what I always say. The lucky ones die first.
Do you know what? It was probably better when he didn't hear what I said.
But I will say hello, audience, because I'm excited to share a joke with the audience this week.
Oh,
It's not the one that made my wife roll her eyes, but I think it sort of fits in with my overall sort of, joie de vivre, which I'm trying to develop. So it's about this chap who goes into a library and he wants to borrow a book on how to commit suicide. And the librarian says, "Naff off, you're not going to bring it back."
oh. York! These jokes are so bad. They're so bad. Yeah, you're laughing. I don't know why. It's so bad. Oh, don't give up your day job, please.
Just imagine this guy. No, you'll bring
Dear
it back.
Lord. Okay. Anyway, in today's show, it's a bit of a cowboy episode, actually. We're going to discuss things about evolution, US GDP, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, how it's reported on, especially people, not Western media, but Al Jazeera, and so forth. So, Tayo, you were talking about, you sent me that thing the other day about that monkeypox and all that stuff. And
Yeah, really. I mean,
did you have a
what is
good
this?
birthday, by the way? I should have asked you properly. Did you have a good birthday?
Yeah, what the hell, Tony? What are you gonna do?
Gosh, even that as well.
Yeah, well, actually, they know my family. They know I don't really celebrate birthdays. I always feel morose on my
Why?
birthdays. Well, because
Why?
I feel, yet another year is gone. Nothing much has been achieved. Closer to the grave. It's just.
Well,
It's
okay. Question for you. What would you feel that you should have achieved? And if so, why aren't you doing it?
Just bone lazy, dude. Just bone lazy, demotivated, unmotivated, can't be asked, worry about not being asked, worry about being demotivated. And then the entire year goes by when I worry, and then my birthday comes around, and I'm like, for F's sake, here we go again. So the whole thing is just one long, continuous, unremitting sorrow. It just is. It's just one of those things where you just think, where is this sting of death that you keep asking for? Just good Lord, just send it in.
Come on, you can't say that.
Let's get this thing over and done with, man. What the hell are we wasting time for? Sakes.
Do you remember we had a discussion about global warming? And
Yeah.
you said to me that at least the global warming people have got a plan B. Whereas the people who are saying global warming is a myth, it's not really true, they don't have a plan B in case it does happen. You're being negative. What if there's no plan B for you? This is it.
Oh, I'm not
There is
expecting
no
a plan
afterlife.
B. What? Yeah, well, actually, but we've spoken about this before. If I knew 100% there was no afterlife, I'd drive to the railway station and wait for the next Virgin Express, because there'd be no freaking point then. I'm not here on this planet because I'm afraid of dying. I'm here on this planet because I'm afraid I'll have to come back again. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that this isn't the end. That's what is really worrying. If there really is nothing, then it's just been a waste of my time on planet Earth. It's just been an entire waste of time. Every little so-called pleasure I've had will become nothing. Every little agony I suffered, all the agonies that I suffered, they were for nothing. It's all for nothing. And I don't think it's for nothing. Do you know what I've begun to feel, Tony? I've begun to not just feel, I've begun to understand that there's intelligence everywhere. There is intelligence behind all this. It's serious. I mean, when you talk about intelligence, you think Einstein was clever. This thing that is behind all this, it makes Einstein look like an inebriated and slightly imbecilic ant. The amount, the sheer brilliance of this whatever it is, the intelligence that's behind all this. It's like I'm looking at Russia. Well, just call it what it really is: Russia v NATO showdown in Ukraine. And if you think about it from the point of view of a game designer, you'll start thinking to yourself that it's all been sorted out. Russia has got the resources, all the resources it needs to prosecute this war. NATO has got certain resources too, and advantages, but they're balanced out by what Russia has. And then not just that, but there had to be a time where everything would have been perfect to set up this clash. A few years ago, it wouldn't have been perfect. And maybe years from now, it won't be perfect because who knows, maybe China would have become too powerful to face down or something. But there had to be this moment that it looks to me like the whole blooming thing was just set up. It was set up.
Are you saying it's set up via a spiritual nature, or is set up by people, humans, who've collaborated together? They're looking at the situation globally and they can move the pieces as they see fit because they have enough influence.
Not at all. I'm talking about something from another realm. There's super intelligence, not some humans, doofus IQ of 100 or something. This thing has got an IQ in the trillions, maybe. It's unimaginably clever.
How can you make that claim without any evidence? I mean, what you're just talking about coincidences or pre-planned events that have just now come to fruition. How can you bestow what is happening to a higher power? On what grounds?
It's a worldview, Tony. It's a worldview. The reason why I haven't yet responded to the chap on YouTube who wrote and said, because he didn't know my name, he said the guy who about Greta Thunberg.
Did he not know your name? You're legendary.
Precisely, it's doofus. That's what I'm going to tell you first of all. And listen, doofus, you don't even know my name. No. I mean, no. What did he say on that Greta Thunberg episode? He said, "How can I talk down Greta Thunberg when I believe in reincarnation or something? No, when I don't believe in evolution." And the reason I don't want to start yet another evolution argument, because I've had hundreds, if not thousands, is that I've realized that it's a question of world view. We're all looking at the same facts. We're not. Yep. Neither one denies the other's facts. By the way, that's a funny thing.
Mm.
I don't deny the facts that evolutionists are talking about. Evolution don't deny the facts I'm talking about. But we look at the same facts, but we come to different conclusions. And it's really because of the way we are. It's because of our personal biases.
Yes!
Now,
hooray! You finally understood what I've been saying all along.
I doubt it. But
it is. If you go back to countless chats and episodes we've gone through, I've said that countless times. It's our personal worldview. The world is the same. It emits all these colors, but our filters in our brain only allow some of them to come through. In essence, it's like a translator. We have a translator in our brain, which translates images that we see, sounds that we hear, things that we touch, etc. And this translator can be on the blink for some people, and it only lets in certain things. And based on your biases in your brain, you look at the data that's being input and you then apply certain rules that you've got part of your DNA, not part of your DNA, that you brought up with, and those rules give you this worldview. Now, you may accidentally only let in certain viewpoint, which then reinforces your particular worldview. So you reinforce that worldview, but you've missed out some crucial evidence, which is there, but your filter, your translator, so to speak, is not seeing it or not accepting it. So it's dismissing it. And so you get a different view based on what you let in. The same applies to what's happening in America. And we've even talked about it. Social media actually reinforces this view because it actually does the filtering for you. Your brain doesn't even get an opportunity to do it. It's not presented with all of it, and you apply your own biases. You've only been given half the picture. So you only get what you've already seen before. And so you believe that is your worldview because you've seen there's all this stuff over here you're not even seeing. And the same is happening with the media now with this conflict in Russia. Both sides are restricting the other viewpoint. So you get fed only one side of the argument. The same in Russia. They're only getting fed one side of the argument. We're only getting fed one side of the argument. Whereas if the communication lines were kept open and we were able to see both sides, there'd still be a load of people who still be polarized and stick to their view. But at least you'll be able to have the intelligent ones in the middle who can see both sides of the coin. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen. But your worldview does indeed give you your worldview because it's based on your upbringing, your biases, what you've been brought up hearing and seeing, and that becomes part of you. And so clearly the world is influenced by that.
Yeah, no. I love it when you go off like that because I just wait to go, yeah, no. No, you were close, but no banana, I'm afraid. No, you were close, but no banana. It's very slightly different what I'm saying.
Oh.
Very slightly different in that, first of all, I'm restricting myself entirely to this argument about evolution. Okay? So with the thing of evolution, what annoys me, what really pricks my goat, is that an expression? Prick my goat?
No. Gets my goat.
Thank you. Yeah, what gets? What I was thinking, that doesn't sound right. Prick my goat. So I was like, very sort of, what the hell type? Okay, so what really gets my goat is this. The people on the evolutionist side claim that they are on the science side, that theirs is the scientific method side, and that is wrong. That's what blows my mind. It just makes me so annoyed. It's like, listen, we know what the scientific method is. You are claiming something that you have no right to claim. You are garbing yourself in the cloth, I should say. You're garbing yourself in the cloth of science, but you're anti-science because you believe things. It's actually a faith. It's a faith-based perspective. And if we could just own up to it, we wouldn't have a quarrel. In the same way that I don't really have a quarrel with people of other religions. There's no quarrel. They believe what they believe. I believe what I believe. But when you claim that your evolutionist idea is scientific, and then we start asking you, the sort of evidence that you get from a solid science, we're met with responses, excuses, and I've forgotten the word. I love the word. Obfuscations, suppositions, assumptions. It's just ridiculous. It's just a never-ending thing where it's spinning a story, and based on that, you claim it's science.
Can I just interject there, though?
Yes, you claim it's science.
A lot of the science hasn't got every answer, though. They never claim to have every answer, but what they do have is based on current information, and they then put the final pieces together. It's like if I gave you a sequence of numbers and it was like this: all, we had to unearth them, right? And it was in a line. You discovered them in a line, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, and 10. Okay, that's what we found. Now, you haven't found the one after 6 and before 8, and you haven't found the one after 8 and before 10. But you've got all the others, and all the tests seem to imply that there should be one there between 6 and 7, and there should be another one between 8 and 9, 8 and 10. 8 and 10. And even though they haven't found the number 7 and the number 9, the evidence is powerful up to that point. Now, you're totally right. It could be that in this example I've given, 1 to 7 exist. Sorry, 1 to 6 exist, and there isn't a 7. It's actually 48, but then it jumps back down to 8. You could say that, but the probability of that is incredibly remote and doesn't make sense. So scientists don't say they have every single piece in the jigsaw, but what they do have is enough there to make an educated guess as to what it is. So anyone that says evolution is a fact is fooling themselves, because it's not a fact if you wanted to be, totally scientific about it, because it has to be repeatable and observable, and evolution clearly isn't. But there's enough evidence there to make a fairly sure assumption that the pathway of what's happening is doing this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, even though they do have missing pieces. However, I will caveat that too. There are some glaring ones further back that are missing. So they extrapolate backwards from what they found to get to the beginning point. And there isn't a lot of evidence in that direction. And that's where possibly where evolution does fall down.
You put your finger on the thing, and then you moved on without, you stepped on the mine, and it went off, but you didn't realize it, and you just jogged on a happy camper. And when you stepped on the mine is where you spoke about, you gave an example, and then you said the probability of that is incredibly remote, and basically implied that it could be dismissed. Remember we were talking about the numbers?
Mm.
The probability of evolution being true is mathematically as close to mathematical 0 as you can get. There's this guy called Dr. James Tour, T-O-U-R, and he's like a rash on YouTube, if you can find him. And
what's his name again? Dr.
James
Yep.
Tour, T-O-U-R.
Tour.
Yeah.
Okay.
He gives these incredibly dense lectures on biochemistry and the biochemistry of life and the origins of life.
Yep. And
people end up attacking his academic qualifications. Is that you can't talk about this stuff. It's not your field.
Is that it's not his field? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's the counter. That's where they come. So, oh, you can't talk about this stuff. It's not your field. And the guy's like, look, dude, I build nanotechnology machines, nano machines. Okay, I build nano machines, right? Using chemistry. I'm as close to the person you're looking for to explain evolution as you'll ever get in one human being. Because the only difference between what I do and what nature does is that I do mine intelligently. I know all the difficulties, and nature has already sorted out. It has already fixed all the, crossed all the hurdles, hurdles that we can't cross with our intelligence, with our technology of the 21st century. And that's the difference. So you just said, because I don't have a biology degree, I don't know what I'm talking about. You don't know what you're talking about because you can't do what I do, because I've won awards, international awards for what I'm doing. right? And he
Okay.
talks about the mathematics of the thing. He says people who speak about evolution simply don't know what the hell they're talking about. I've always suspected this, but I don't want to go off on a tangent. Let me just finish what I'm saying. I have so many ideas sort of buzzing around in my head at the same time. But one of the things he talks about is that people don't know what the hell they're talking about. And at my level, at this my sort of layman level, it would be something that I had sensed. That when we talk about the opposing thumb, for instance, you can easily think about 5 fingers all facing forward, and then something happening, and there being a mutation, which makes the thumb oppose. And you know that there's one generation has got all fingers facing one way, and then the next generation basically has got the introduction of this mutation, which causes the thumb to oppose. But it's not that flipping simple. There has to be a change in the physiology of the organism, in our case of humans, of the hand. And a corresponding change in all the nerves, all the muscles, and the brain. All these things. It's not just one simple system. When you look at it from a macro level, you can go, yeah, okay, then the thumb became opposable. That's, they're like trillions of changes that are required to bring that about. And each one has to be a successful change. And where is it? Where is the evidence of this in the fossil record? How do you even propose, forget about the fossil record, Tony, how do you even propose that it even happened? When we ask you to break it down, then what happened? And like that trillion step process. We say, okay, start with this, then what happened next? And how do you know? And why did it happen? And what mutation was that? And where is it in the gene? When you actually pin them down, it's all hogwash. It's all absolute nonsense. It's faith. There's no science there. When you talk about science, it's like we say to you, well, wait, science, you said it's observable and repeatable. No, observable and repeatable. Actually, what's the first one? You missed one out. There's 3 of them, isn't it? It's not just observable and repeatable. It should be, what is it, experimentable, it's confirmable. There's something that's missing. When you do the experiment,
yeah,
you have the postulation.
Well, repeatable. You're repeatable, aren't you?
Repeatable,
observable, and repeatable. Yeah, you have to be able to repeat what was being proposed.
I think that's the experiment. The idea of experiment comes into it. Well, anyway, well, the thing that gets me is like this science thing is like the whale, the evolution of the whale. What do they see? It's they saw some creature, a land-based creature, and it happened to have from an incomplete skull, by the way, it happened to have an eardrum that reminded them of the eardrum of a whale. So they decided that this was the ancestor of whales. I think it
was a land creature that then migrated to the sea.
According to them, yes. Pachycetus, it was called. It is called Pachycetus because it was found in Pakistan. And one of the closest skeletons it looks like today is like a wolf or something. Only that it had this what they say is this eardrum, this bone in the air that reminded them of the bone in the air of a whale. Then they found another one called I don't know, I can't remember the blooming sequence. Ambulocetus, which they said fitted into this imaginary line of descent. And then they found something else, and then they found something else. And for a long time, this was the holy grail that, we have found it, that it's the conclusive evidence that this creature evolved into the whale. And even to today, I think it's one of the favorite examples of evolution. But the whole thing is based on supposition. If I said to you, look, take away, don't ask me to assume, don't ask me to join your assumption, right? So okay. I'm the ultimate skeptic. I refuse to accept any of the assumptions. So prove it to me the way you prove it to me in a court of law. What happened next? When you got this Pachycetus, what did it give birth to? And how? What happened next? Well, how did the next generation come along? Where is the gradation to the next generation? And then the next, and then the next. You don't have gradations. You have these sudden jumps.
Mm.
And that is why there's not a gentleman, there were two gentlemen, and two gentlemen's. I'm getting excited now. Two gentlemen's. There were two gentlemen, and I really wish I could remember the name. I think one is dead or they're both dead now. They came up with this thing called, I think it was the 70s or 80s, they came up with this thing called punctuated equilibrium.
Yes, where there's big jumps.
Why did they come up with that theory?
Because there was no way of explaining the jumps.
Exactly. There was no way of explaining, because there is humongous gaps that cannot be explained away. So they said, well, you know what? It's punctuated equilibrium. There's a mutation that comes and suddenly everything will be all right, and the next generation is perfectly well adapted to its environment. But that's a faith-based statement. Why is it like that? How? What is the mechanism? Would you mind, showing us something that we can, as you put it, observe and then repeat? No.
Mm.
And I go back to the point.
That is a theory, though. You're
whole
right.
bloody thing
That's
is
a
a theory.
theory to back up the gap and the way that the jumps have happened. Because you're right, there isn't this smooth transition between evolutionary stages. It's just, well, it's just big jumps, and it's like no gaps in between, and there's nothing to be found. So yeah, you're right. This theory was put in place to somehow explain this jump. But you're right, there's no evidence to back it up. It is only a theory.
It's even worse than that. The biggest absence, the biggest absence of evidence is the Cambrian explosion. Now, supposedly, all life began from a single multicellular organism, which somehow became alive. Somehow, I mean, nobody even wants to go there, because if it was just again, James Turr would go crazy here. He'd say, you can't have what they claim, the RNA world and the DNA world. Well, the RNA world, if for some peculiar reason we could even get to an RNA world, and I think some people have postulated that they've recently found, in the last 2 or 3 years, they've recently found an asteroid in which they claim there's evidence of amino acids or whatever it is, and possibly RNA. It's got them all very excited, but excuse me. But
Well, if that is the case, then that does change things.
Well, we know very well.
Well, we don't know very well,
Those of us who are anti-evolutionists know how this playbook goes.
Go
They
on, then.
find
Could you do
something.
it for the benefit of our listeners? Is it something that the average person has no way of corroborating, and then they use that as their evidence to prove this flawed theory of evolution, to back it up somehow, when in reality it's so loose knit that it's not really evidence at all?
No, what happens is, and this has been happening, this is why we say we know the playbook. Somebody discovers something, they tell it to a reporter, it's blown up out of all proportion to what was actually found.
Well, that's the reporters for you. That's in
the mass media. Yeah, they take it up and they run with it, but it's this echo chamber, and it confirmation bias. It helps evolutionists confirm their biases, and suddenly everybody's talking about, oh, we found it. This is the mother lode. This is it. Finally, we're going to make a mockery of all the tiles in this world, and then the evidence is investigated and it just gradually seeps away and nobody mentions it. The trouble is that in the public's mind, nobody told them that evidence has been introduced now. So the public still has that evidence in their mind. Remember Lucy?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that Lucy is it. I mean, Lucy is still maybe in some museums still have exhibits with Lucy in it. Thoroughly debunked. Why are we still using it?
Because it brings
Completely
punters
debunked.
in the door.
Sorry?
It brings punters through the door.
Well, that's a
Paying
terrible
punters.
thing, but that means that they're lying. The punters,
Well, yeah, they're
the
putting
punters.
down, they're leaving that as previous evidence as what it was.
No,
So now,
they don't say this has been debunked. They just leave it there.
Well, they do
The-
explain
New York,
this was purported to be the missing link, but it's now been proven that it isn't. But it's still a nice exhibit.
No, Tony, they don't say that. No, Tony,
They do. They do.
They don't. I can do this all day if you want. They don't. I believe that the last one I saw was something called the Guggenheim, I think. The last evidence I saw was the Guggenheim in New York, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just there as Lucy, one of our ancestors. And then this famous
right, one of our ancestors. It doesn't say it's the missing link, does it? Because that's what they used to say.
No, I don't believe it says it's the missing link.
They used to say that's what it was.
Yes, but now we don't believe that the bones that make up the thing that looks like Lucy all came from the same creature. There is no such creature. There never was. Do you realize that the greatest distance between the bones that went into that, what you would remember as being Lucy, do you realize that the distance between the fragments of bones were up to 2.6 miles? Do you really believe that that's the same creature? 2.6 miles apart?
2.6 miles.
2.6
sure about this?
Why do I get 2.6? I am sure about it. It's whatever I say, just, Oh, yeah, and I want to correct you. I was going to say whatever I tell you, please feel free to come back in another episode, and we'll just quickly refer back to it for those people who follow us religiously. And they will know that we're talking about the same thing. And episode that we spoke about, when you and I were talking about America, this is an aside, guys. It's a free-flowing episode, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the
jumping around,
but try and stay with us. Tony and I spoke about whether America was broke or not.
Yeah.
And we referred to it when we did our 100th episode review, or whatever you want to call it, retrospective.
Yeah.
We returned to it. And then I said America was broke and the income was 3 trillion a year. And you said, no, it is more like 20 something trillion a year.
It's something like that.
And so I looked it up, and guess what? You're wrong. America's GDP is 20 something trillion a year.
Yeah, that's their income.
No, that's their GDP.
Yeah.
The income, the federal tax receipt, is 3 trillion a year.
Oh, right. That's different. You didn't say that.
The federal tax receipt
receipts.
The federal tax receipt to me and to any normal human being is what the government can spend. The government can't spend its GDP.
How can the government borrow against its GDP?
It can borrow against GDP. Well, it can borrow against GDP, but they can't spend it in the sense that it can't control it. And this is what this guy in Senate was talking about. That how can we have an income? And he's in Senate, by the way, so you think he knows what he's talking about? Questionable.
Have you really thought about that?
That's a questionable American senator. Well, he said we can't really be spending all this money when our income is 3 trillion a year. And that's what got me, 3 trillion a year. And they owe 30 trillion, 10 times more than the income.
Yeah, but against the GDP, it's not a big issue.
When you say
the country is generating that amount of income. So it doesn't matter whether they're taking it as tax receipts. It doesn't matter. That it's what the country is worth. They could, because they're the government, change some rules and bring in more. They can do that. And as long as you're paying the minimum amount, you can borrow the money and do stuff. Every country in the world does this. It makes sense to do that rather than try and earn it all yourself. You just borrow it.
Okay, so let me ask you a question.
It keeps the global market.
You said you can just take it from the economy.
It keeps the global market running, by the way. This whole thing is everybody's doing it.
Okay. Anyway, let's not. I don't know what that even means. But listen, so you're saying that because the GDP is 20 trillion a year, is it even 20 trillion a year?
24 trillion, something like that. Okay. Yeah, the
Right.
22 trillion is what you earn. It's like
No,
it's
hold
like-
on, hold
okay.
on. 22 trillion is not what they're earning. What they're earning is 3 trillion.
No,
Because if
it's
they went
not.
into their economy, hold on, you
Go
don't know what
on.
I'm going to say yet.
All right.
If they went into their economy and pulled out 22 trillion, first of all, I don't know how they do that, because they would have to disenfranchise every single man, woman, and child in America,
They wouldn't
who would
do,
then be left with absolutely
they
zero.
wouldn't do that. That's not how the lending
No,
works.
exactly. That's my point. You can't lend everybody everything you've got, because according to you, that 22 trillion is just available instantly somehow. Like, you can lend it to me. No, we can't. I'm using the damn thing. I'm using my car.
How do you buy a car and a house? Sorry, how do you buy a house?
First of all, can you please, before you go down that route, just tell me what I mean?
What you're doing
No,
is
what
you're
I
not
mean, what do I mean?
understanding finance.
Okay.
You're doing just the basic this is what I've got in my bank account. That's not how it works. Your salary a year is what determines what you're worth. Now, that salary is not all yours, because you have to pay your bills, you have to pay your rent or mortgage. So it's not all yours. It's not at your disposal. In reality, whatever your salary is, you have a tiny fraction of that. But because you're earning it, that is what you can borrow against. So that's how finance works. It's not exact, but it's enough. And the whole world works that way. So the fact that they only have 3 trillion of actual physical taxes is irrelevant. They turn over as a country 24 trillion. So they've got money coming in. And that's how money works, because it's long-term gain. I will loan you this money because I know your country generates a lot of wealth. You'll pay me back. As long as you make my minimum payments and a bit of interest, I'm happy. I've loaned you the money. That's how finance works. So you don't have to have the readies there. And that senator who was saying, how can we spend this money when we've only got 3 trillion? He's talking absolutes. That's not how the financial markets work. I know this because I'm in banking, and this is how it works.
It could be that your view on banking is why this country is in big trouble, isn't it, Tony?
Well, it could be. I'm not saying your view is right. I'm not saying it's
I might
right
be
or
the one
wrong.
that's actually right. I'm saying that when you talk about GDP,
Yep.
there are things in the GDP that aren't liquid.
Yeah, you can't spend it.
But you're counting it and saying it's my income.
It's not your income, it's your wealth.
How's
It's
it
not
your income?
It's your wealth. It's your
buildings,
potential.
it's my wealth. All right,
Your
it's my wealth.
potential. Yeah.
The city of London is very wealthy if you take its per square foot thingy, whatever, what you call it. I've got to stop using that word thingy. The square foot real estate. And you look at it like that.
Yeah.
And you can say, based on that, okay, this is our GDP, for instance. But the point is that you can't convert that. You've got to have other people just come along. It's like speculation, if you like. It's paper nonsense.
But that's how the whole global market works.
It still comes down to, what are the actual readies?
No,
yes.
Not in finance. If you want to do anything, it's your GDP, it's what you're worth, not what ready cash you have available. How do you think Elon Musk, who is now quoted as the richest man on the planet, pays hardly any tax? Because all his wealth is all tied up in buildings, stocks, shares. Guess what? You can't tax that. So the wealth is there. It's just you can't get to it. But it doesn't matter. It's still got a perceived value. And that's all the stock markets and the lenders want. So even though America's tax that they receive is only 3 trillion, they're spending up to 24 trillion because that's what their country yearly is worth.
Yeah, I think there's a flaw somewhere in there. But
I know there's a flaw in there, but that's how it works.
I'm getting closer to coming in and hammering this argument. So I'm going to have to table it for now.
But that is how it works. When you buy a house, how do the mortgage lenders
remember how we got onto this topic?
No, well, okay. Because you brought up America, because you were talking about we were discussing it briefly, and you mentioned about the income. So we thought we'd attack it while we're here. When you buy a house, right? How do the lenders value to give you a mortgage?
I missed that because you dropped out.
When you want to buy a house in the UK,
Mhm.
What do the lenders do? How much do they let you borrow? Based on 3.5 times your salary.
Uh-huh. Right.
Now, that's not your disposable income, is it?
No.
No, of course it's not. It's your salary.
Yeah.
But they base it on that. As long as you can work a job, as long as you've been working a job, we'll lend you the money because it's a long-term investment. As long as you can meet the minimum payments, they're happy because they're receiving that minimum payment for 25 years. They've built in an income. They've built the profits into the money that's been lent, and they risk assessed you. He's fit and healthy. He can earn. He's got another few years to go. Yeah, we can loan him the money, and we can make money back on the fact that they've loaned you the money because we know you're good for it because you're earning this much already. And the same with America. They know they're good for it. They've not defaulted. So it's not, they can borrow up to their GDP because they're good for it.
Okay, quickly, that's not why they haven't defaulted. They haven't defaulted because that's where they get dollars from. They can just print dollars.
Yeah, because
which makes it a really bad idea for me, in my opinion. It makes it a really bad idea to lend them any money because they can print toilet paper and give it back to you and they've paid.
Yeah.
And I suppose this is why I say, I said, oh, because this is like jumping to another topic. This is why I say they shot themselves in the testicles by playing around by stealing Russia's reserves, stealing Venezuela's reserves, and stealing not Iran, sorry, I beg your pardon, Afghanistan's.
Iraq as well.
No, I don't think it was Iraq. Did they really? I don't think they did that. I think it was Afghanistan, Venezuela, and Russia.
How did they steal Russia's reserves? What, through these sanctions?
Well, actually, they just took the reserves. They just took 300 billion, didn't they, with the EU?
No,
Russia had 300 and something.
They've frozen it. They haven't taken it.
Well, frozen it. So the owner of the thing. Do you know what gets me? It's the owner of the property. Russia sold them stuff. How did Russia get the 300 billion? It sold them gas, oil, coal, whatever, fertilizer. It sold it.
Mm.
It got paid. Give me my money. No, we're putting you under sanctions.
Yeah, I know.
What?
Because they're annoyed with Russia for attacking Ukraine.
Yeah, but we sold you stuff. So what you've done is you've taken our stuff and you won't pay us our money.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
we're not saying it's right.
So the rest of the world's looking at like America.
What's happening here, right? They're doing it to try and slap Russia on the wrist for invading Ukraine. We're not going to give you your money. We're looking after it here, but we're not going to give you it. Once you've pulled out of Ukraine, there you go. You can have your readies. And Russia is fighting back, saying, okay, I'm not going to give you gas and oil because you're putting these sanctions on me. Release the sanctions. We'll release even today, for the benefit of our listeners, even today, Russia have said that they will open up the ports in Ukraine so that the wheat can get out if the sanctions are dropped.
Oh, you must be reading Western press. You must be reading that from Western press.
That wasn't in a Western press article.
Where was it then, please?
Al Jazeera.
Please.
Well, that's not Western press. If you say that, they'll take offense.
Well, they can take all the offense they want. I can actually pinpoint the kind of nonsense they've been talking about for years, even before this Russia-Ukraine issue. Okay. Al Jazeera, nonsense.
Al Jazeera listeners out there, please send all your hate messages to my friend Tayo.
Please, when you do, don't do it anonymously. Let me have your name, number, and address, please, because this is Tayo messing with now, okay? No more Mr. Nice Guy. I don't have a...
Listen, Al Jazeera, you can't keep throwing ammunition at all of them. Al Jazeera is not Western media.
It's as nonsensical as Western media, because they were saying the other day, they were talking up the attack in the Ukrainian so-called attack in Kharkiv. Well, I don't know, I want to say Kharkov. Do you know the difference, by the way, when you say Kharkiv and Kharkov?
No.
It's the same town we're talking about, right?
Okay.
And Kiev.
Yeah.
And Kiev.
Yeah, but Kiev was the old name. It's now been corrected. It's
Kiev. And then Lviv and Lvov.
Mm.
If you put an O in there, that's the Russian way of saying it.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And Kiev was the Russian way of saying Kiev. So since I am pro-Mother Russia, I always use the O. And that's why I say Kharkov. So when Al Jazeera wrote up the so-called counter-offensive in Kharkov, as if they didn't know what the heck they were talking about. The Russians are actually withdrawn. They're actually withdrawn. So what counter-offensive? They weren't fighting anyone. You just walked into the place. And that's Al Jazeera.
How have you got privy to this amount of information that yours is absolutely correct?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because I actually go to the source. What you guys on the West that don't do. You don't actually listen to the other side. I've heard your arguments. I've heard your side of the story. And you've heard your side of the story. But what you don't do is you don't go and listen to the other person's side of the story and then look at the evidence. So I listen to actual bulletins from, I'm just about to take, I look for actual, yes, because what happens is when the Ukrainians go in and they're winning something, they put it online. It's not a secret. You can go onto Telegram and join any of the Ukrainian channels in Telegram, and they always post videos of everything that they do that's successful. They didn't have any success bodies and broken and destroyed tanks and whatnot of Russians when they went into Kharkov. Where is it? On their own channels is not there. So what, are they censoring themselves? Come on, BS. And the Ministry of Defense, Russia, said they withdrew. So there's one narrative going on in the West. There's what's actually going on, and you guys just can't be bothered to just go and listen to both sides of the story. And I keep saying that you have to listen to both sides.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, we've jumped around here. We spoke about America's GDP. We've now gone to Russia and Al Jazeera explaining what was going on, and you're now saying that they're bad as well. Okay. We started off with evolution. We really have bounced around.
How did we get back to America? What's that got to do with evolution now?
I don't know.
I was trying to make a point.
And then we sidetracked.
Guggenheim.
Ah, yeah. About Lucy.
2.6 miles. 2.6 miles apart.
Where did you get that from? Because I've not heard any of that.
That was a book, an actual book, which is next to my bedside. And I'm looking around, but with my eyesight and everything, I can't see the name of the book. It was a book written by someone who was looking at the fossil record, all the fossil records, and just thoroughly hammering them to death. Now, he is actually a paleontologist, whatever those people call archaeologist, I think he is.
Paleontologist is a dinosaur bones person, isn't he?
Right. And don't think he was one of those, because I think he poo-pooed that. If I'm correct, he absolutely destroyed paleontologists. He said it's not even a science. And he says, if you ever meet a paleontologist, ask them, why hasn't any paleontologist ever won a Nobel Prize? And he said, they'll get angry with you and leave. And I asked somebody, a paleontologist online, the same question, and he got upset and left. It was because apparently a lot of scientists say that paleontology isn't a science. It isn't a proper science. It's just storytelling. So there you have it. Anyway, this chap who wrote this book, if you want me to, I can stand up and then look at find the book so I can tell you the name of the book.
Anyway, it's irrelevant. But what you make the point of what he was doing?
He's the guy that he poo-pooed all these, Java Man, the other Australopithecus, all these
Australopithecus as well.
He goes down and he destroys them and explains why he wrote the book.
So what's his alternative then? What does he conclude?
Actually, in his case, he doesn't actually. That's not his problem. His problem is the science behind it, and that's what he was attacking. He wasn't trying to, propose
another
anything.
Narrative or propose another.
No, it was just that isn't science. No, this is wrong.
He's just poo-pooing the science. He wasn't. He was a critic, in other words. A critic. Okay. So basically, in a nutshell, then, can we then conclude that his dig at science was that science was flawed, and they need to go back to the drawing board and come up with a better thesis, a better explanation of what's happening, because evolution isn't it.
Evolution is not it, and there is still all this intelligence that you just have to recognize.
Go on, elaborate. What do you mean by there's all this all intelligence that you have to recognize? What do you mean? All
right. So as far as I can remember, because it's extremely complicated stuff, James Turr talks about the paradoxes of some of these organic molecules. Now, one thing I didn't know until I tried to follow James Turr, and I never knew this, is that we still, can't replicate organic molecules.
No, of course we can't.
Well, I didn't know that. I thought we could do anything we wanted to in a lab.
No, we have to take a copy. There's a copy of it that keeps getting shared around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been in the fridge for 80 years or something, if not longer. And they keep, I don't know how they do it. They grow it or something, and they can then share it out a bit more. But it's original from years back, I think. It's yeah.
When you see, that is what James Turr is saying, that we can't even do that. Do you know why? Because to assemble them, sometimes you require two completely contradictory environments at the same time. You require an alkaline environment, right, for one part of the molecule, and an acidic environment for the other part of the molecule. Well, how do you have an alkaline and acidic
at the same time?
At the same time. And that's what he's saying. Well, this is nonsensical. You can't do it. It can't occur in nature. And if people say, oh, well, if you had the alkaline bit running around for a while, and then the acidic bit comes along, and then they met later. Then he says, you don't know what you're talking about. Some of these links, some of these bonds, chemical bonds,
exist for milliseconds. Yeah.
Milliseconds, if that. They're so fragile. He said, evolutionists always say time is our friend. He said, actually, when you drill down to it, that is the exact opposite of the actual situation. Time is not your friend, because these molecules don't want to stay together. He said, you take a dead creature or a living creature, and when it dies, put it somewhere and see if time's on your side. It's not. Everything's going to try to break down and go back into its constituent elements. It doesn't get better with time, it gets worse.
Entropy.
And well, more than entropy, these things they're not supposed to be, these molecules, the atoms in these molecules don't like each other. So they've been forced together. Their natural state is to be apart. Time is not your friend. And that's the point he was trying to, he's made severally. And
okay, let's I'm mindful
calculations involved in it. You know, that's why I was watching, what's his name again? Richard Attenborough. He was talking about a leaf. Yep. And he was saying, he didn't use the word think, because Richard Attenborough knows everything. It says, we think, to paraphrase, the shiny part of the spine of the leaf is shiny and smooth, so that the water that drops on it from rain funnels down in this particular direction and ends up here. And that's intelligence, man. That's intelligence.
Well, yeah, but let's go back to, that just, you just have to admire the beauty of Mother Nature when you sort of look at that, because we're seeing the end result. I'd love to know and have the vision and, the foresight and be able to go back to how it all began. We all want to know how it all began, but we have no idea. And science so far has given us a picture that makes it palatable to a point, but it doesn't seem to be based on real science either. It's on speculation and probabilities, of which, as you've described, seem to be quite far-fetched. But let me bring it back a bit to this James Tour. What's his angle? What does he, although he's trying to poo-poo the idea of evolution himself, does he propose another?
Oh, I think he was born a Jew, but he's a highly committed Christian.
Ah, okay. So he is biased, though.
I've warned you about doing that, Tony.
No, but the thing is, I don't like that. I like the book that you've said. I must admit it. That's
it doesn't
impressive.
Matter who the person is. No, I've warned you against it. Don't do it. Now you're looking at the finger. You're not looking at the moon. It is irrelevant who tells you what. Look, even your Al Jazeera thing. How do I know about what Al Jazeera said about Kharkov? Somebody mentioned Al Jazeera, and I had to go look at it for myself. No, but that's what you do. You don't worry about who the person is. If you send me all the time to BBC, you do. BBC. Why would I go? But I have to go because you said something, and I have to go and have a look at what the link you sent. That's what you do in life. You don't worry about the person, about the source. Go and look at what was said, because do you know what? It just might be right.
No, I agree. It could be right, but you've also, at the start of the program, we discussed, because I'm mindful of the time, we discussed at the start of this show about biases, and you said, and I said as well, why we have this view. The world is what it is. It produces the data. It's how our filter, how our personal bias views that data and disseminates it in a way that's congruent with our belief systems. So if someone comes along and poo-poos evolution, and then you look at their background and they say they're an Advent Christian, you almost have to sort of roll your eyes and go, okay, they've got an agenda here. Do you understand? What I prefer, I liked what you said about the book that you produced. You said this guy was you didn't actually come up with the author's name, but he produced really good arguments against Lucy, paleontologists, Java, the original excavated bones that the media and everybody else made out were the missing links. But he has scientifically broken those down and poo-pooed them. But he hasn't got an agenda. He's not then saying, oh, it's because I don't believe what you're saying because of this. He's just saying your evidence and your scientific methodology is flawed. I respect that, because he's actually looked at the mechanisms that people have used to come up with their theories and their suggestions, and pulled it apart and said, well, look, you've made a mistake here. Look, you've made this assumption. I like that. Whereas Dr. James Tor, very quickly, because you've told me he's a committed Christian,
please finish saying what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if in any of the videos he has mentioned God or Jesus or divine intervention or anything, you'd be right. But he scrupulously avoids mentioning any of those things. He's only looking at the scientific evidence. So what does it matter to you what he believes?
Because you still have
He
the bias.
scrupulously.
You still have the bias.
He might have the bias. He might have the bias, but it's up to anybody who says this is biased to actually show from what he said that he is biased, because he makes a challenge. He challenges people at the big. I need to find you one of his videos and send it to you. And then we'll just start with just the very first thing he says is, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this. If anything I am saying is scientifically wrong, put it in the comments and challenge me to a debate. And that's a standing challenge. And I'll send you that. And I'll also post it. And this, we're going to post. We must post it this time, because it's got to go out. People have got to see for themselves. And I've been absolutely honest.
Okay. Look, I'm mindful of the time here. I think we're reaching the end of the show. So do you want to have a final thought here about what we've spoken about?
Well, it's been a bit of a cowboy episode. It's been all over the place, but I have enjoyed it, and I hope our audience will enjoy it too.
Wonderful. Unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show for another week.